So you extended then for another 2 years.
Yeah, it's 18 months at least.
Yeah. And I think I read, kind of thumbing through your book, that you actually made a trip then to Europe.
Yes, we had to take a load of wheat to Greece. And out of Mobile, Alabama, we had to go to the Panama Canal. That was orders from San Francisco again. They took you wherever they needed you during that period of, once the war was over. They used everything they could to supply. And when we got to Greece, Salonika, Greece, there were dozens of ships that had sunk out there. And we had a port guy take us in, and he hit a sunken ship and damaged our ship.
Wow. Wow.
So we had to unload that whole load of wheat with barges. And then we had to shut off the front bay. You could go by closing your doors and shutting off the bow. We got back to Toronto, Italy, and we were there 30 days in dry dock fixing our ship so we could get back home.
Did that give you a chance to get out and tour Italy a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Toronto, Italy, yeah, we did.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got pictures in there where it's standing underneath the ship and when they're working on the bottom. Yeah.
And what was it like going through the Panama Canal? That must have been a fascinating journey.
Yeah, it was. Going over and back again, there was so much shipping on it, you had to wait in line to get through. And you just waited in our case, we waited overnight, and then sometime in the morning they guided us through. You had to go up a certain amount of lifts up to a lake and then down again, the same way back.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Now, between the war ending and your 2-year extension, did you get a chance to go home, or would it just
No, I got a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And what was that like after being at sea for so long in these exotic lands?
It was good.
What was that homecoming like?
It was good.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had a friend, Jim Sandham. He was from Boulder, and we both come home together, and his mother wanted us to start college here, their son. But while we were at home, rather than going back, we got notice to report to New Jersey. They had contact, so we had to catch a bus and go back to New Jersey, and they had a ship there they put us on.
Huh.
And that ship was supplied with food and you name it, took us down, and we went to Puerto Rico and Cuba to help them bring back their standard of living. Made 2 runs of that.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we come back. We finally come back through the Panama Canal again to San Francisco, and finally, after the 18 months, kind of died down. So Jim and I decided we'll just call it quits. So we went to the Merchant Marine office there where the Coast Guard was still over. We said we're going to go. And they said, okay, thank you for your service, and we're well on the way to do what we want to get done to help get the nation back on their feet again.
Yeah.
But we were offered, we had enough sea time to go to San Francisco, over in Oakland, for a 90-day period. And then we'd get our second commission, a commission, junior grade or ensign. That would have been an ensign grading for the Navy, Coast Guard, and the Merchant Marine. But if you did that, you had to sign a 2-year contract.
Oh, yeah. You probably had enough.
So I was I thought, well, should I or should not? Jim said, hecker, we're going home. So we went home.
Yeah. Wow.
But again, there were some that did that bread, and the next thing they felt that was their living. We had a neighbor one time in Denver that did that stayed, and he finally worked himself up to a skipper in the peacetime.
Yeah.
But he stayed.
Yeah. Did you have any desire to maybe make it a career, or
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it got so bad toward last. Some of the guys that stayed on, the skippers got to take their wives with them. Especially that happened in Atlanta. Just our wife. And that way, they didn't lose personnel.
Yeah.
Because Brad You were away too long.
Oh, yeah.
For married life and family
Right.
life, that was no life.
Yeah.
And if you were in your right mind, you didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there were some that did it, and they did work themselves up to a good rank. But they had a terrible married life.
Right.
A lot of times their wives would leave them, and oh man,
Yeah.
that's another story. Yeah.
So you get out, you return home. Let me ask you the reverse question. After that whole entire time and the things you experienced, how was that adjustment going from military life now back to civilian life? Did you have much of an adjustment, or was it a pretty easy?
Yeah, it was a nice adjustment.
Yeah, right, yeah.
A nice adjustment. I went back to Salina, Kansas. The folks didn't like Denver, so they moved to Salina, Kansas. So the boys, my other brother that was in the Marines, come home, and two sisters. So I decided to see what I'm going to do. And what Salina didn't have they just had a teacher's college. They're called Westland. And I went out there and I thought, do I want to be a teacher? And at that time, the telephone and the power company were taking in apprenticeship training. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to learn a skill, because in the Merchant Marine, I didn't tell you about this, in San Francisco, while we were on the way from one ship to another, two of us were called to a Swedish ship. Two guys got sick, and they had to make a run to Hawaii, just a few weeks, and back. We took their place, and when we got back, they were well and they got on. So after that, of course, sometime after we went home. So I picked the electric power company for my 4-year apprenticeship training. But I had a choice, that or the telephone.
And that's what you went on to do as a career?
Yes,
with the
I
power
got my
company?
license. I got my electrician's license. And then, of course, I met my good wife. Yeah, you know, when you meet good women, I gotta take care of them.
Talk about how you guys met and how you wooed her. Talk a little bit about how that.
Yeah, that was nice. And you know what? That Bible that my mother had, she had prayers that all 4 of the boys would come home and marry local girls.
Uh-huh.
Because I saw what was going on in San Francisco. When ships would come in and these gals would stand there, they'd go to the next ship. I mean, there was no married life there.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
good married life.
Yeah.
So anyway, her prayers brought us home.
Wow.
And her prayers were answered. We all married local girls. And thank the Lord, she helped me. I later on, I wanted to go to college, and we were married, so I took night school and got my engineering degree in a night school in Denver. So I was an electrician with Gates Rubber Company for 15 years, and 15 years as an electrical engineer. And that's where I retired.
A 30-year career.
1991,
Yeah.
I retired.
Now, when you went back to school, I know there was an issue with the Merchant Marines not being recognized and not getting the benefits. Were you entitled to the GI Bill?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, you were. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
Not the GI Bill.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
You got the GI Bill, but you didn't get the college.
No, we
Right.
did get that college.
And
Yeah, right now I'm in with the VA in Denver.
Yeah,
I got
but that's what I'd like to talk about. I mean,
Oh, okay.
that recognition didn't come until years later for
Yes.
the Merchant Marines.
Well, it was through Roosevelt starting in him, and on up they said they should get recognition. There for a while, they weren't getting them.
It was
No.
what the 1970s before you were truly recognized as
You're
no,
right.
it was the 80s.
80s. I mean,
It
80s.
was 82.
Yeah, you're
almost 40 years later that you were finally recognized as veterans.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the time that's why I studied at home. I studied at home. I'd be up at midnight, and she would take care of the kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got my diploma that way, my engineering.
During that 40-year period, did that bother you that you guys it had to bother you that you weren't recognized for your service? Or
It
you
did,
think
but
much?
you know, right on the contract with the Coast Guard, we were armed forces.
Yeah.
It should have been entitled
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But there were mistakes made all during the war, so that's just another mistake that was made. And that's it. And they finally recognized it, give us the benefits except the schooling. So that's fine. We got through that. But Brad, you know, there were a number of mistakes made. Still made in Washington today,
No, sure.
and that goes on.
Yeah.
But if I had to go back and do it over again, I liked what I did. I think I served the country the best way I could,
Absolutely.
and that was our achievement that we
Yeah.
were after.
Well, you mentioned while you were studying, your wife took care of family. Talk a little bit about your family.
Yeah, we had 5 boys and 2 girls. Right? Now, what did I say wrong?
You didn't say a thing wrong, I was just looking around at the family.
Yeah, they're all here.
No, they're not all
5
there,
boys,
but-
well, yeah, that's right. 5 boys and 2 girls, and you know what, they were all good boys.
Yeah.
And you know, Brad, a happy married life and home, a happy home is a happy home.
Yeah.
And we've enjoyed our family, right? God bless them all.
Yeah, we enjoyed the grandkids too,
Yeah.
And the grandkids.
How many grandkids? Great
24.
grandkids? How many?
24.
24 grandchildren.
I keep saying 23, I can't keep up anymore. It's 24.
5,
And,
right, one
any,
died.
oh, 20, okay. Any greats?
13,
Jeez.
and we're just starting with the great-grandchildren.
And how many years have you guys been married now?
63.
63.
We'll be 64 in June.
Yeah, and we're still in love.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Through the years, did you keep in touch with some of the guys you served with? Was there any sort of reunions, anything like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's not too many, a lot
Yeah.
of them, but we do. I'm a life member of the Elks Club in Denver, and also a life member of the American Legion. But Brad, at the beginning of the guys the Merchant Marine. I've got a picture. Did you see some of the pictures in there? They're about all gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But all gone. There's just a few of us left, World War II. And we're all in our 90s. There isn't anyone. When you're 18 years old in the beginning of the 40, you get to this point, folks, you're looking at the last of World War II.
That's right. Yeah.
And this morning was a real proof. Look at this morning. There was a gal there, a nurse. And I think I've said this once, and Luke, we didn't get to meet her, 102 years old. You knew about that,
Oh
didn't
yeah.
you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Is she from here?
Lives up in Wellington. Yeah.
100? And she gets around.
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to your 100th birthday party.
Okay. Well, you know what? We had kind of planned a trip, just the 2 of us. We've always made trips together, elder hostel programs. But we may cancel that. But to sweeten our time and our heart, we ordered a new car. And just ordered it and enjoy till we turn in the keys. We'll have to turn in the keys. So I talked to AAA. We're AAA members, and he said, Luke, I advise you just go monthly, on a lease basis. And when the time comes and they give up the keys, we'll take the car back.
Sure.
That way you're only out $200 a month.
Yeah.
And no big investment.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we can enjoy something new. And
Yeah.
our time's coming too.
Yeah. Sure. Well, Luke, as we wind down this interview, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? Any of those stories that have kind of floated to the top as we've been sitting and talking that you want to talk about? And I want to open it up to anybody here in the room with questions they'd like to ask
Okay.
your father or grandfather too, so that
be fine.
ideally we round out your story. I know an hour and a half isn't going to cover some 90-some years of life, but hopefully we've got a good part of your story told. So.
Well, Brett, you impressed me. You did real
Well,
well.
let's leave me out of the equation here. Let's.
Well, he had good questions.
Yeah, but
He had good questions.
so I'll open it up to anybody here in the room that has any questions they'd like to ask.
Well, I want to hear the story about you and Jim Sanders and the Stork Club. The Stork Club?
Oh, that was on that trip that we got orders to go to New Jersey. And on the way, Jim, they were Jewish. They were very wealthy. The guy had a business in New York. And his wife was living in St. Louis. So on the way, we stopped at St. Louis and seen her, and she gave us some money to go out and have a good time. When we got to New York, we didn't know where to stay, so we went down to the YMCA just to stay overnight till they told us what shift to go on. But I think that was more than 3 nights, I think, we're there. But his uncle called, and he said, I'll send a chauffeur down to pick you up, and we'll take you to the Stork Club. So we got to go to the Stork Club. They come out with a limousine to the Y, picked us up, took us to the Stork Club, gave us a table. At the table there were 2 beautiful women there. They were dressed, and they had low cutting dresses on them, and up to here. And you know what? Before the evening was on, that gal I was with, I had too much farm guy in me. She said, honey, your best place to go home on the farm. I did do the right thing. But we had a good dinner.
Yeah.
And all that. But I had too much farm boy in me to enjoy all this beauty.
Yeah.
And all we did, Jim, when the ticket come, I don't know how big the ticket, we had drinks and food, he just signed his name.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll be
And
done.
we had these 2 beautiful girls for the evening.
Did you ever do any of the Hollywood canteen or the stage door canteen?
Oh yeah.
So you were in L.A., but did you go to the Hollywood canteen ever?
You know, not that I recall,
Okay, just curious.
but we used to try to make the USOs.
Yeah. Did you any famous actors or actresses in any of those shows that you remember?
The Dead End Boys. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of them were on the ships,
Yeah.
but I didn't get to meet them. They were on other ships. Yeah. And help me on that, Beth. I think there was another 2 I told you about, and I didn't write that down.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. There were.
Wow.
But right now
That's
I
fine.
can't.
Yeah.
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 Darn it! Anyway, I should have. If I'd known that, I'd looked it up and
No worries.
named that.
Any other questions anybody have?
Well, I'd like to, you said you was on a ship with 5,000 men. Well, I was on a ship with over 8,000 when I went over.
Well, you were on a bigger ship than.
It was a big one. When we popped in Japan, we had to move some buildings out. I think. Okay, that was 8,000 Marines. And then they had the people that drove the ship. Now, I want to ask you, how many of you think came home out of that 8,000? That'll reach.
How many?
Yeah, I can believe it.
Wow.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
You'd go around looking for somebody. Because I was a 20-year tramp going over. So I was a 20th truck coming back.
Yeah.
And it was in the paper in San Francisco. I don't care for the Red Cross, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Right.
They had it in the paper. Red Cross meets 20th draft. and they had it in the paper, 1,800
Wow.
out of 8,000.
Well-
And you know what? Nobody cared.
Yeah. Wow.
They had signs, Marines and dogs keep off the grass,
Wow.
and it was solid rock.
Now, that was a different era.
Yeah.
That was an altogether different era, Virgil.
I-
Unfortunately, that was your era.
Yeah.
Hey Dad, when you, the first ship you left, so when you came off of Catalina Island and your training, so they shipped you up to San Francisco and that's when you got your first ship?
Yeah.
Okay,
If you're familiar with San Francisco, Van Ness Street
yep,
is a through street.
correct.
And there was a big building up there. They just bunked us in there as a group. And right down by the corner was a type restaurant where you go through and get your food. I forgot the name, and it's all gone. That
Cafeteria style ones?
yeah, it's one of those. They would send us down with tickets to the meal, and we'd come up, and we had to stick around because during the day, they say so and so, we report to the front desk. Well, you know what was going on. You'd go down, and next thing you were out the door in a bus to a ship. That's it. So, the time you got back from food, if you didn't hear the first orders, they'd come over again, or you had to come by the desk and you'd see your name on the board, report to the desk. Well, you knew what that was. As soon as you got up, there's a bus out there and we're loading.
Oh, jeez.
And you go down to the next ship. Because these ships, as they were loaded, Brad, and as the personnel was loaded on, the officers were already on. They needed support men, you know, to run the maritime guys trained. So down on the ship you go. They just run down Embarcadero Street, leave all a bunch here, leave all some there on the bus. Get on that ship.
And that's where you first would meet your crew then.
That's where you were
Yeah.
on the gangway.
Yeah.
You'd go up in the gangway and they said, come on up, go in and see the skipper. As soon as you went into the skipper, you had a sign on. And I didn't know about the watches then, see? So I signed on, so the first time I was on, I got a 12 to 8. And I didn't like that. I learned fast. But anyway, after that, you were assigned a room, and he would tell you as soon as we get the load, the guys on, we're pulling out in the morning. If it didn't make it in the morning, you had to wait till the
For
following
the tide.
morning.
How long were you in San Francisco before you got your orders?
On Van Ness Street, about a week, maybe over a week, as I recall. There were a lot of them up there. That building was full, going out and coming in. They were coming in and going out, and just a constant flow. And they didn't want you to get too far from the building because if you got called, they wanted you to be there, be available. You know, and Brett, that could have happened that some guys probably tried it. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But I followed orders. Yeah, we stayed. Yeah,
And straight from there you went out to what was it, Laos, New Guinea?
yeah. Once we had the crew aboard, in our case, it was about 2 days. The second morning, we pulled out, as I remember. But as we backed out, there were other ships backing out. And then we just got in line and went back Alcatraz. We got to see Alcatraz. And then we went out with the tide,
Yeah. Wow.
one after another.
Wasn't there
And that
some-
happened days to days. Huh?
Wasn't there some kind of a symbol or something that you did going under the San Francisco Bay Bridge? Wasn't there something that became kind of standard?
Oh, I don't
Well, I know
know.
a lot of people I've interviewed said that as they went under the bridge, it was like that was the line that they were
was the
saying
line.
goodbye to the United States,
say goodbye.
going into the unknown.
Yeah,
And,
but you know, Brad, on the way back was nice. Coming in, you'd hear those foghorns.
yeah,
Next thing you'd see the bridge.
yeah.
Woo!
Wow.
Just the opposite.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after you went out the bridge, then you start doing this.
Yeah. The waters got rough.
Yeah,
right?
then
Yeah.
you start doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, the last question I like to ask in these interviews, Luke, is as you look back on your time over there, how did that affect your life, change your life, play a role in your life, or do you simply look at it as a chapter in your life? How would you answer that?
It was a learning point. It didn't mature me. Going in as a young guy, I had a lot to learn. But Brad, the main thing is your upbringing. I had a good family upbringing, and I didn't have a wandering mind. I always stuck with what was right and wrong, and it helped me a lot. The Merchant Marine taught me a lot. How to deal with people, how to work with them. And on the farm, I didn't encounter that a long time. And here I did.
Yeah.
How to work. And when I come home and started school, that was still with you. I learned how to thank the Lord for bringing us home. And that stayed with me to this day.
Wow.
With my wife.
Well, I think that's a good point to end on. Luke, I want to thank you for sitting down to tell your story today, but
Thank you,
just as
Brad.
important, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you so much. Years old, out of high school, and farm deferred because about that time,
Yes.
my two older brothers come home,
The ship. There was a.
and after their injuries, they were well enough to take over the farm, and my parents moved to Denver, Colorado, and bought this house in 1933 Josephine Street.
Oh, that was, that's right.
After that, I lost my deferment and had to report to a recruiting station.
Does Mark
That's
ever-
the end of training ship Avalon. It was
Does Mark ever sleep?
a ship that took the tourists to Catalina Island pre-war. But during the war, it was a training ship that picked you up in
Sleep?
San Pedro and take you to Catalina Island. And this is a picture of Catalina Island. And this is a casino that was so popular in peacetime with all the wealthy people. And the day was always full with expensive yachts. Now all this was Merchant Marine. Turned over to training and etc. I had to come up with the Wrigley gum.
Dad, you said you went to many dances in the casino.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
was the bands that you saw there?
Tommy Dorsey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tommy Dorsey. They'd march us up and we would have to greet. Oh, one time we marched up and they said, well, there was always a packet of people in the, till they seated us. And they said, we'll have a stage show up here and before we start the band. And they had pickpockets in there. And I'd be darned if I didn't lose my watch and didn't know it.
Is that right?
Some guys lost something else. And you sit down in front and they'd say, anybody own this? Who did? Yeah, that's mine. What? How did they get that?
Wow.
But all they were trying to show is, and we did get that in Italy, Toronto, Italy. The skipper we went on, they said, when you go downtown, don't go by yourself, go as a group. And some got pickpocketed.
Yeah.
Most amazing places because the way it's set up, if I remember, it turned upstairs, and that created air conditioning. So my wife and I got to visit it. So they would open all these windows all at the very beginning, and you had this unbelievably great breeze coming through there. So you could pack 1,000 people inside there and not be hot and have these wonderful dances. It was a beautiful design.
It was a beautiful design.
Yeah.
But when they got to Catalina Island, they marched us up to the villa. They said, okay, boys, line up, undress, let your clothes lay, and get in line for new issue of clothing. And that's what that was. All this had to come out, and as we walked through, you were issued all the uniforms.
Oh, wow.
And your dungarees and whatever you're going to wear.
Yeah.
And we never did know what happened to our clothes. And again, from here, it went to the villa. And again, see, we're dealing with clothes. And that's commander come across at an instant, he'd say, this group go in this, there were 4 to a unit, cabin. This unit, they would call you, man, go in E, this unit go in B, and it was just beds in there, and it shows you beds. Some were a little bigger, but there were just beds in there. But to go to the restroom, they had to go down. They had another room to go to the restroom and shower. All you had in there is just bedding to sleep and fall out in the morning when you heard reveille.
Wow.
Yeah. On this dock, they would definitely have gasoline and oil and set it on fire. And you can see some of them in there already. You had to jump the way they told you in order, you know, and they told you exactly, be sure and do that. But some of these guys in the water, I didn't know until later, they were there for a purpose to save guys that couldn't swim well, or they'd get excited. But you had to get down and come up and learn to make a little air bubble and swim maybe from here over there to underwater, you know, enough to get out. And that was used a lot of times in the Pacific when the tankers got hit.
Yeah, right.
Terrible. And again here, they were all getting ready to go into the swim. And here too, it was all, and here a continuation of the fire. And you can see guys in there swimming away from it. Yeah. It would have been easy, and a lot of times some of those guys had to help some of the guys. They were in trouble to get out of there. It's our lifeboat training. And on our lifeboat coming back, we got gunnery, how to shoot the machine guns. And here's the cartridge that was one of my jobs. Put this on. Another guy brought him up from the hole, and then there was a Navy guy that did the shooting. Again here, it was a boxing drill. They wanted to keep men in shape because you had a lot of this. So they wanted to keep guys in shape. We'd do boxing, we'd climb hills, you know, up the hills, anything for training.
Now, Luke, do you feel as a country farm boy you had an edge over the city boys?
Yeah,
Here?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sure did. And I had a brother that was a Jack Dempsey award fighter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Remy Hecker. Anyway, from there, back to the ship and the guns. See, now there is a 5-inch there, a bigger, but that was mostly all the Navy gunnery that went to Navy gunnery school would handle them. As far as the maritime guys, we would shoot the 20 millimeters. And you know, on those 20 millimeters, you were familiar with the tracers that they used. They'd have us shoot at night sometimes and during the day, but especially at night, you could see the tracers and you could almost guide the gun where the target was. Those are just drill days. Weekends, they'd have the advanced training out there and the basic people out there training them. And you had to dress up and beat and eat. That was quite a chore to get out there and get that all done. And parade day. That's all parade day information there. As we advance in training, this was our company. We'd always work in the company. And here I am. And here's my buddy from Boulder, Jim Sandham. And the sergeant and group took the picture. He took the picture of the group. But we were together in training. The only time once in a while one would have to fall off because of a fall out because of a health deal or sickness.
Yeah.
And he would just fall back to the next group. They would just move him back. But we just finished here, but we continued this training for a number of weeks yet after that. But I wanted to take this home so we would have a picture of we had Navy gear on again, Coast Guard. And from here, once we were through, we were sent to San Francisco. Heave ho, my lads, heave ho. It's a long, long way to go. It's a long, long pull with our hatches full, fighting the treacherous foe. Let the sea roll high or low, in the ocean we will sail. We'll fight any, we'll sail any ocean, sail any river. Give us the goods and we'll deliver. We're the-
So that was your first ship?
yeah,
Okay.
that's the first with 5. Run it twice. We were 2 trips to New Guinea.
And the one, it's the same ship, both, or
Yeah.
pictures of the same ship?
Yeah, no, yeah. This is advanced secondary school that you got about, the 12th week we were there, or we were there. And after that, you were probably sent up to the Catherine Hotel for further training in flags, gunnery, and the lights, where they,
So you were trained on all of that then?
yeah.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah, we had to learn that with the Navy.
That'll be darned.
Because the doula was about my second, when I had 2, the 4th ship I had, but it couldn't do over 11 knots, so we had to keep in a 10-knot convoy. And they finally, as soon as the victory ships come out, these were set aside. You had to go faster ships, and we'll get to that. The Admiral Noodle was faster. He could stay in 14-knot convoys, and therefore, the 11-knot convoys was history. As soon as they could get faster ships. You'll see the next page here with, that was one of the last victory ships. It stayed out of convoys, but I was able to get a picture of it from a friend. So I took it because they were put out of service as soon as these ships showed up.
And these are the Liberties here?
No, these are the
These are the
victories.
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 You ready? The growth of the merchant marine, it'll tell you here 1942, very small. 1943, still small. 1944, they were beginning 24-hour-a-day shipbuilding. 1945, finally they were able to get enough ships out that Admiral Nimitz said, now we can do what we're designed to do, to get stuff moving. And when we got to this, we were full power. But they were turning these out. The way they were lined up, they'd back up and run another hull in. And they would pull those over and load them right away.
Wow.
We were up in Van Ness Street getting assigned to each ship.
Wow.
And the victory ships had numbers on them.
So
that the
they
bu-
weren't named, they were just numbered?
just numbered.
Yeah.
And the bus, that was for the bus driver. When he went down, he'd go to that number
Gotcha.
that he was told up from the,
So when you were in San Francisco, this is in essence what it would look like
Yeah.
with all your ships lined up, getting ready to go.
no, these were still under construction.
Yeah, but when you were
yeah.
when you went to the docks, when you were getting on your ship, was it similar to this
Oh, yeah.
in terms of how much they were lined up?
Yeah. You
How
know how
many-
far the docks were apart?
Yeah. How many do you think were lined up in succession like that before you got on your ship?
You know, the best I can answer that, it's a little rough. They had about 20 docks. They were full, and there were ships laying out 100 yards. We backed, the one backed out, the others would come in. The Victory Lane now is in St. Pedro, California, as a museum. And it used to be on Port Dock 22, but I understand they moved it this summer to another area up near the Marine base.
Now, is this the ship you took to Europe?
Yes, yeah, Victory Lane, we took, and it finally became a museum.
Okay.
Yep. That was. When we were in Cuba, we couldn't pull up a dock, so we had to anchor out to unload, and they didn't have very good equipment. They just had to come out with a kind of a truck-like tanker and unload a little at a time. So we had free time, and we built ourselves a boat just to be doing something. Same way here, there's a group out here building the boat. And here shows a hole that we had already. There were 5 of these, and this one was already empty, so they would go to the next one. And the holes were marked from bow to stern, hole 1, 2 in front, midshipmen in the middle, and 3, 4, and 5 holes aft. And there was a lot of room down there. And a lot of this stuff was for their support, whatever they could use. San Juan, Puerto Rico. Yeah, that's San Juan. That's
San
right-
Juan?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
And we had to use the winches. So the Merchant Marine, we had to run the winches with a guy. They didn't have enough manpower, but they could load. But we get the winching from here to the dock out of the holes. Run the winches. So that's what we were doing there. And then we had a little time in between. And the kitchen, one of the guys said, "Hey boys, I saw the cook and he gave us a chunk of meat. We can go fishing." So they put a big hook down there
Maybe someday.
through the bosun, and they caught this shark. Caught that shark. Pulled him up on the winch, and we got him up here, and we took pictures of him. After we left the Marshall Islands and heading toward Iloito, these red marks were American ships and Australian ships coming this way, up in this area to get ready for the attack on Japan, and where we were all anchored out on the signing of help me on this.
Armistice,
So
or
the
Yeah.
treaty, the surrender?
Yes,
the Missouri.
these were all moved up right here.
Yeah.
Elowecock?
Yeah,
Atoll?
it was up in Iloito. Yeah, it was the closest to Japan. As a matter of fact, what we didn't cover really.
Which we can't hear, so.
Yeah, when the treaty was signed, some of the ships needed water and we needed water. So the commander of that area said, "We'll have you go into Tokyo and get water on your ships." And we got to go in. A number of our ships got in there.
Yours as well?
Yeah, we had to go in and get
Yokohama
water.
there. Lou,
Huh?
you went to Yokohama.
Yokohama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Yokohama, Japan.
Were you able to get off at all, or just stay
Yes,
on?
we did.
And what was that like?
And they had quickly set up a USO. So and there were Japanese scouts in there too. Oh. They could speak English. Yeah. And there was USO. We got something good to eat.
Yeah, right.
And
We- I'm sorry, go ahead.
pardon?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the gals on that skipper told you, said, "Don't leave that USO unless there are 2 or 3 of you, if you want to walk the street a little." But then one gal invited us to see her home in the USO. When we went to the home, the thing that surprised me, we went into the living room, there was no furniture, you sat on the floor with a rug, and they would sit on the floor and they'd serve you tea. Well, I had to go a comfort break, so a number of us, they sent us into another room, and there was just a hole in a trench running through here with a hole in it. You close the door, and you use that hole.
Wow.
Wow.
Women and men alike just close the door, and that's it. And I think to this day, they haven't updated a lot of those areas.
Luke, I got caught in that.
Is that right?
Anchored out here waiting. How many ships would you estimate were you anchored with?
I'd almost say, on the Merchant Marine, when we were at sea, we were told we have an ice span of 7.5 miles before the curvature. I would be on deck some night and report something, and the officer of the day was up on top. He'd say, "Hager, you should have seen that out there, and I didn't see it." Then he finally told me later, I'm just kidding, he said, because the higher you're on a ship, you can see 8 miles, depending on, now Navy aircraft carriers, they had that high turn, they get way up on top. You get more. But to answer your question, being down below on the bow, as far as I could see, I saw ships. Now they weren't up close. You had to keep 50 yards apart, and that distance. And with the American ships, the tankers that were there, and the Australian ships, wherever you could see.
Wow.
And we were sitting ducks with a kamikaze.
Yeah.
Just absolutely sitting duck. Yeah. And that was a bad one to get get out of.
And you were just sitting there waiting.
Yeah, we were waiting for it. Well, that's when that could have happened any day.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they were gonna make that attack.
Right. They were desperate.
Certificate of service from the United States Merchant Marine, and that was signed by Deputy Marshal Administrator in Washington, and that was nice to get, to get that recognition.
Yeah, yeah.
Now see, here it says from the Armed Services of the United States of America. So we were armed services under the Maritime Merchant Marine. See, there's a catch there. And when the Coast Guard said, now we're gonna turn you guys loose, you can still stay with us, but you'll be in the Merchant Marine. And see, today, the Merchant Marine is taken over by the Matson line and by private companies. And the Matson line's big out there. And in private companies, and they're furnishing their own men. And all the container ships, a lot of those container ships have foreign sailors.
Yeah, right.
Here's a letter from Harry Truman. I was very proud of it. To you who answered the call of your country and served in its merchant marine to bring about the total defeat of the enemy, I extend the heartfelt thanks of the nation. You overtook a most severe task, one which called for courage and fortitude because of the demonstration, the resourcefulness, and the calm judgment necessary to carry out that task. We now look to you for leadership and example for further serving our country in peace, which I did. When I got back from the Merchant Marine, I was still single, and they were taking draftees, and if you were married, they give you an extension. And here I was single yet, I wasn't married. They said, Hecker, you're going to the Army. You're single, married men, we give them a deferment. So here's Army pictures in Fort Benning, Georgia.
So you were drafted back into the Army, or did you
Yeah.
volunteer for that?
Yeah, Truman, we got back into the Army.
Because they didn't recognize their service.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, geez, yeah, right.
See? And it was supposed to, remember it said back to the armed forces? But then since I was single, I was subject to draft. Got in and spent, it was supposed to be for 2 years. I was in it 12 months, and the group was gonna be sent to New
Korea.
Guinea, and not
Korea.
Korea. And when I got called up, they said, Hecker, since you were in the Merchant Marine, you can go or you can get a discharge. I said, I'll take my discharge.
Oh, sure. Boy.
And I went home.
Yeah.
This is the Merchant Marine chapter in Denver that was organized. By that time, we had already lost. By the time we took this picture, we had already lost several of the, Merchant Mariners due to health and etc. But I've got it down here when that was formed and etc.
Yeah, it doesn't say.
Oh, it doesn't say. Yeah, I should have put that in
How
there.
many of those guys are alive now, Dad?
There are 3 of us.
3 of you left. Wow.